All right, so we're doing a bunch of service on the 1122 TST today. There'll be some other videos showing some other maintenance things. But right now what we're going to do is we're going to swap out the unloader valve, or the pressure control valve. I mean, I guess you could call it a few different things. First thing we want to do is we want to take the old one out. And the tools we're going to need for the whole job is going to be a 19mm wrench. That'll pull the unloader out. We're going to need a ratchet, an 8mm deep socket, two 10mm wrenches. And I'm using a caliper, and I'll show you where I'll be using that. And then a little bit of O-ring lube. I'm using petroleum jelly. So first things first, let's pop the cap off of the existing unloader. So that comes off. We'll go ahead and pull this nut off. And then why you would be changing out this unloader is if you've got your pressure is no longer adjustable, you don't have enough pressure, and even when you crank in the unloader, you don't see a pressure increase on the gauge or a decrease. So that knob comes off, spring comes off. There's also a thrust bearing inside there. So we'll leave that over here. There's the old cap. And then what we've got now is we've got the stem for the unloader poked out and a couple of nuts. These double nuts here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to match what I see here with the new unloader. That should get us in the ballpark of where we want to start with our unloader. There is some finite adjustment with these double nuts. So in other words, if you crank this in and you're still seeing pressure increase and then it bottoms out before the pressure gets to where you think it should be, you can adjust these nuts so that you get even more turns in. And then once the pressure stops, even though you've turned the knob more, if the pressure stops and you can keep turning the knob, that's far enough. You won't need to get any more out of that. So you want to back the nuts off just enough so that when this all goes together, your pressure, when the knob stops, your pressure is maxed out at where it should be, if that makes sense. So anyway, let me crack this loose. So you need a 19mm wrench to get this one out. All right, so there's the old one. Mine is it was probably about time anyway, at least to O-ring it, if nothing else. So anyway, so here's the way the new unloader comes. It comes with the cap off, the nut off, so that way the handle or the knob just comes off, threads off. You've got your thrust bearing in there. That's what this looks like here. Bearing, so it goes knob, bearing, and the other race. So that set aside. Now you can see the spring comes off. And then here's what we've got. We've got the unloader, the way they send it is the nuts are loose and not to where they need to be. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the caliper and I'm measuring the distance from the face of this nut to the end of the threaded shaft. The other thing you could do is you could butt them like this and get them close. So what we want to do is adjust these. So what I have is 18mm right now. Yep, 18mm. So there's 18 right there. And then we'll lock these nuts down. So they're 10mm. You want to keep this one where it is because that's where you measured from, and tighten this nut against the other. So there we go. Double check that. There we are. We're flush and we're right at 18mm. Just like this one. Check it again. Yep, it's the same. So now you should hold them together and they should be dead the same. And they are. Okay? So we'll set the old one aside and then we'll go ahead and put a little O-ring lube on these O-rings. Don't need very much, just so when they go in, they aren't binding. Okay. All right, thread that back in here as far as we can by hand. Let me grab our 19. Lock her down. Doesn't need to be too crazy tight. All right, so now that we've got our double nuts adjusted where they need to be, we're going to go ahead and put on our new spring, our new knob. Make sure that the thrust bearing is in correctly. So you don't want to see the bearing. It should be well, this is how it should look. You should have a knob, thrust bearing with the balls on it, and then the outer race, and that goes on here. And then we're going to go ahead and crank it down until it stops right there. Then we're going to take our new nut, which is 8mm, and we're going to thread it on the end of the shaft. Use our little socket here. Now we're not going to tighten it We're just going to snug it up for now, and then what I would eventually do is after you run the machine and make sure that you've got full range of your pressure, so you don't, because you can adjust, like I said, those double nuts can be adjusted to get full range of pressure. Once you've got that verified, then you would take this lock nut, or this brass nut out and Loctite it onto the shaft so it can't back off. Last but not least, this plastic cap snaps on. I'm not going to do that yet because we have to verify. We'll have to run the machine, make sure we got full range pressure, and then if I have to make some adjustment, I can. I'll go ahead and Loctite that brass nut on there and then snap this plastic cap on the end, and that's pretty much it. We do carry the unloader and any other maintenance parts at obsessgarage.com, so hopefully this video helped you if you need to change out your unloader.